Once again, we come to you from the Vidhan Sabha in Patna, and the big question is who's going to occupy that in terms of the treasury benches come the 14th of November. That's the big question. First phase of elections has kicked in. First phase of polling today, where Bihar is concerned, 121 seats going into vote. You have the fate of Tejashwi there on the ballot of Raghavpur, the chief ministerial face for the Mahagathbandhan. You have the fate of 2 deputy chief ministers who are in the fray, plus 11 mantris of the NDA. So a big ticket polling day coming in. We're going to cut across to our reporters, our editors on ground, who've been getting us the latest sense on what people are feeling. For someone who's been on the road for the last 10 days, I'd say it's an unusual election for the state of Bihar. And why I say it's unusual is because it's a silent election. You rarely put silence during elections and a Bihari in the same phrase, and that strangely is happening this time. So what will it come down to? Arithmetically, on paper, the advantage where caste calculations are concerned seemingly lie with the NDA. But what do our experts think this morning? Joining me, Javed Ansari, senior journalist, Mayank Moli, spokesperson BJP, Pooja Tripathi, spokesperson Congress, Rajat Sethi, political analyst. A very good morning to all of you. Let's begin with Javed. Javed, you've covered the Yadav family very, very closely, Javed, and I still remember, on an anecdote in 2015, I remember you were in a chopper with Lalu Yadav, who was all there in full political force at that point of time, and he actually left, he didn't have space in the chopper and he left you somewhere in Chhapra. I still remember that. Lots of those stories, but for someone who's looked at the Yadav family and the Bihar politics, Javed, how do you see things poised? And take a moment to actually also reflect on how this election comes full circle on some of the stalwarts, that have dominated the political space and shaped the electoral, fate of Bihar over decades. Okay, we don't have Javed. We're going to try and connect back to him there. Let's get in Rajat Sethi. Rajat Sethi, lots of our reporters are coming back with the same feedback as what some of, all of us are actually picking up on ground, that this is a silent election. But what are your biggest takeaways, Rajat? 121 seats. If you go back to 2020, data would suggest advantage lies with the Mahagathbandhan. Can they hold on? Because they won 65 of these seats the last time around with the NDA at 56.
Good morning, Preeti ji. I am of the view that the last election was done in an intense shadows of COVID. COVID was unfolding. We saw migrant crisis and whole set of issues which became predominant. And also keep in mind that back then Mahagathbandhan, with Tejashwi having those whirlpool helicopter rides and giving that signal, he had his back broken, but he still was fighting it out. So he was giving that fighting spirit back then. And you remember that iconic images that used to come out of his campaign where he had a gamcha in his hand and he was waving those gamchas all throughout the election. This time he has a different attire. He's not having his gamcha around. He doesn't have his kurta along. He has a t-shirt. He's more calmed down right now. And therefore, the flip side of this is that, you're not able to conjure up a movement that is required to build the degree of anti-incumbency that you could have potentially built. Having a silent election typically is seen as a failure of the opposition to be able to build up a movement on the ground. And any incumbent would actually love and find it peaceful to have a quiet election wherein there is no flare up of emotions one way or the other. That's a relative win for the NDA, and this is where
Right.
Nitish Kumar, the sitting chief minister, who is ailing, wasn't challenged to the extent that he had to come out and exert extra pressure. So he took took his own time, took his own sort of efforts to keep the momentum going, and that's about it. This is why we are seeing a quieter election this time. But, except the media houses. Media houses have tried very hard.
But it's very unusual.
But it's quiet.
No, the joys of any a political journalist, Rajat, or anyone who covers an election is to see, the entire color on ground, to see those big fights, to see those big statements, to see voters, aggressively going and pushing forth on who they want in the chair come the 14th. So, you can't blame media houses. You're looking for, for all of that, but yes, it is what many of us see, a silent...
Than the election environment. That's all I'm saying.
But that's true. In terms of optics, yes, I'd agree. There are many of us milling about all across Patna, coming from Delhi. But that kind of excitement, that kind of fervor is not there. This is not a wave election. You don't see it for either side. There is a strange, conspicuous silence to it. But I want to bring in Javed. I believe we have Javed back. But Javed, for someone who's covered Bihar for so long, the voters of Bihar, are... They always wear their allegiance on the sleeve. Very aggressive, this time strangely quiet. What are you picking up in Javed? I was actually telling our viewers on that story of yours, because you're someone who's actually looked at the Yadav family very, very closely when it was at the height of power and the descent as well. Javed, 2015, I remember, I was a cub reporter. Javed used to be our, he was a bureau chief. And he was on a chopper with Lalu Yadav doing an exclusive interview, and Lalu didn't have space in his chopper, and he made Javed get down in the back of Beyond of Chapra. And, Javed, with all of that, with what you have seen in Bihar, it's also full circle for some of the socialist leaders where Bihar is concerned. A new bloodline will take over from here. So this is also a very important election in that term.
Yes, Preeti. And as in life, so in politics, we've all come a long way. You're a star. From a corrupt reporter to a star, Lalu Yadav was a star. He's no longer in the best of health, and the baton has passed on for Tejashwi, to Tejashwi Yadav, for better or for worse. It is passed on. But Lalu Yadav, the irrepressible, colorful Lalu Yadav, who was, there was a quote. It was such a pleasure. I've also traveled extensively with Nitish Kumar. Nitish Kumar, of the two of them, was more sober, more stately, more measured in his responses, and I know both of them extremely well. But they were a study in contrast. Great friends once upon a time. They were partners in crime, and they got together once to take on and defeat Mr. Modi. It was the same 2015 elections. And the incident that you talk about was Mr. Lalu Yadav took us to Shahabuddin's constituency, and then there was a local leader who jumped onto the chopper, and Lalu was carrying about a kg of govers, and there was no place for the videographer and me, so he says, "Ab aap yahan utariye, on the way back I'll come and pick you up." And true to his word, he did. So Lalu was known to do these things.
But that never happened, did it? But Javed, that never happened, because I remember a car had to leave from Patna to fetch you back, because you were at the back of Beyond waiting for Lalu to pick you up.
Absolutely. But also, it's very easy to lampoon him and all that. But the fact is that, do not forget, he and Mulayam Singh Yadav brought about a seismic shift in India's politics. They upturned the caste calculations. The have-nots became the rulers, and you can't ignore them. Yes, there are a lot of things they ought to have done better, could have done better, but then the same can be said of everybody, including people who rule us today.
Fair point. All right, before I go across to our political spokesperson, Rajat, do you want to weigh in? Because for a brief while, before we get caught up in the heat of phase 1 polling, we're going to continue to see reactions to reflect on the proverbial fork in the road, where certain socialist leader that dominated the Bihar landscape, this possibly is their sunset election, and the new generation or the new leaders take over from here on.
So I was just hearing, we can continue to shower praises on Mulayam Singh Yadav and Lalu Singh Yadav duo, but they brought in a very, very ugly form of politics to the foray. They ensured a formula which...
I'm even talking about Nitish.
No.
Rajat.
Allow me. So there was an indication where...
the question. Go ahead, make your point.
So the two Yadavs, they had the other OBCs and the EBCs sidelined across the states of UP and Bihar. For a fairly long time, there was just absolute lack of representation coming in from the really the downtrodden sections of the society. It was only Mayawati who stood up and ensured that other caste combinations can come out and challenge the dominant caste politics, dominant OBC politics that was led by the Yadav communities both in UP and Bihar, and challenge that formula. So I think while their ingenuity lies in the fact that they could, both of them did this Muslim and Yadav combination and took it to the hilt and ensured electoral benefits is reaped both in both of these states, that formula had to be broken, and the states, both UP and Bihar, had to be put onto a trajectory for development. Because if you enter into a cozy formula and that formula remains undefeated, you will have no incentives to perform. This is the reason where I believe UP and Bihar lagged for those golden 10-15 years where the rest of the country was racing ahead post-liberalization. These two states were held back because the politicians there had an easy way to power. They didn't have to struggle to that extent. It's only when that mold was broken, and largely because of Nitish Kumar, who brought in his socialist politics, but brought in an alternate electoral arithmetic to the table, which allowed a fresh perspective and allowed some breathing space for others to also see representation.
Okay. All right.